thank you all. Thank you for having us here. I did one of these about a month ago for Fire Shut Up in My Bones at the Met, and it was just so wonderful to have an audience here. I think these works in process at the Guggenheim are just really fantastic events, and it was really great to participate in that one. And I'm so thrilled to be doing this one for the Santa Fe Opera. Let me make a couple of introductions, even though these two gentlemen don't really need introductions, but I'm going to introduce them anyway. So one of America's most distinguished playwrights, who also works in, of course, theater, does musicals, does film, does television, is David Henry Hwang. And known for such plays as Chinglish, Yellowface, and Butterfly, of course, and the musical Soft Power. He's on the faculty of Columbia University. And he's also one of the most prolific opera librettists in America, and we're going to have him talk about that in a bit. And also somebody who's collaborated several times with composer Huang Ruo. And Huang Ruo, the composer, whose works have been performed all over the world, most notably the New York Philharmonic, the Concertgebouw, London Sinfonietta, and the Santa Fe Opera, where I had the pleasure of working with him for the first time on his opera. We did the American premiere of Dr. Sun Yat-sen. Also, he wrote a fantastic opera for Spoleto called Paradise Interrupted, which has been done many, many times. And we're all collaborating on something. Actually, the last time we worked together was an opera called An American Soldier, which was first premiered at the Washington Opera, and then at Opera Theater of St. Louis, where I'm the artistic director. We expanded that into a two-act opera, and then coming up in February or March, we have a project called Written in Stone at the Kennedy Center, and they have written, we're working on something called The Rift. So if you happen to be down in DC, be sure and catch that. All right, so these two gentlemen, I have lots of questions for you. So first of all, how did the two of you start collaborating? What was your first project? Was it an opera project, or how did you get to know each other? What was that?
We were, I think, initially introduced by our mutual friends.
The Grand Duo.
Sorry?
The Grand Duo.
Yes, yes. Joanna Lee and Ken Smith, who may very well be here. But so they introduced us just because they felt like they're kind of East-West artistic matchmakers, and they felt like we would get along, and they're right. So the first thing we worked on was Huang Ruo wrote some incidental music for the revival of my play, The Dance on the Railroad, when it was done off-Broadway at Signature Theater in 2012. And then you began talking to me about other stuff.
So almost 10 years ago, and since The Dance on the Railroad, we actually, at that time, we thought it would be great to do an opera together. So we went down the list of possibilities, and I was very surprised no one has done & Butterfly. And of course, I knew no one has done it. I did the research. But David was like, oh, yeah, no one has done that. And so we decided it's time to make that into an opera. And in fact, David is a musician as well. He plays the violin. And so he told me when he was writing that opera, there was musical elements in his head. So it makes sense to me also to make that into an opera.
So nobody had ever asked you to do Butterfly as an opera?
Well, you know, when I first came up with the idea, my initial impulse was that it would be a musical. And at the time, I had a Broadway producer who was interested, but I didn't actually know any composers. And I was like, and I didn't know that I could write lyrics at that time. And I was like, this is too much trouble. I'm just going to write it as a play. And you know, that worked out okay. But it's always been in the back of my mind because, you know, I mean, we can talk about the story of Butterfly for those of you who don't know the play, but you know, it is kind of a deconstruction of Puccini's Madame Butterfly, as well as a story that's set in a more contemporary era. And so music, I think, was always a big part of the impulse behind this show to begin with. And therefore, in some sense, when Huang Ruo started talking about making an opera version, I felt like this may be like a fuller interpretation of it. Like maybe it was always destined to be musicalized, given that that was my initial impulse.
And was music a big part of the original production, or when you were thinking about it? Because the play dates from 1988, and so you had music in your head for it. But was it a big part of the original production? I did not see the original production, so.
I mean, the original production used a lot of Puccini, as one would expect, because it was deconstruction of Madame Butterfly, as I was saying. And even the first draft had a lot of references to what arias, what pieces from Madame Butterfly would be counterpointed with the action of the play. And then there was also a lot of Chinese opera in the show, and so that music had to be composed. And the initial director of the Broadway production was John Dexter, who for many years was resident director at the Met.
Right.
So there was always a lot of music in the world of the play, even when it was just considered a play.
And for those of you who don't know the story of M. Butterfly, David, do you mind telling us the story?
Sure. So it's based on the true story of a French diplomat who had a 20-year affair with a Chinese actress who turned out to be A, a spy, and B, what we would now call physically male. And the diplomat claimed that he never knew the true gender of his lover. And this became a big kind of espionage scandal in France, but at that time, the trial took place in like '86. At that time, obviously it was pre-internet, it was hard to get information like from French newspapers. You had to go down to there was like an international newsstand in Times Square to try to get stories from France. So there was like one column in the New York Times on page 36 about this, and that I couldn't research it much. I didn't know much about it, and I just thought, oh, I'll just make it all up.
That's fantastic. So, Huang Ruo, what attracted you to the story? With all the different stories that are available for operas, we were just talking about that backstage, all the different things you can turn into an opera. What was the thing about M. Butterfly that you know prompted you to ask David to collaborate?
I still remember when the first play I saw when I was at Oberlin in Ohio was M. Butterfly. And you know, coming from China then, when I was in Shanghai, I saw plays in Chinese, but I never saw, you know, American play before. But then I remember seeing this poster has a naked man on it, Asian man in that matter. Very curious. This is not Puccini, but maybe misspelled. You know, it's just for the, you know, college, you know, you save some print, you M and then a dot. Right. So I went to see the play. It was not an opera, it was a play. And I remember walking out confused a little, you know, as what, you know, the characters are. But I remember in my head very clearly there were Puccini quotes. And I almost wished that they could speed the time. Okay, I know this aria already, just get onto it. And then years after, when I met David, I said, why they, you know, even it was done on Broadway. But after that, I saw several versions. And they, you know, Gallimard always say, oh, here, this, and you hear the Puccini in the background, this one, that one. Then David was saying, at that time at least, right, not everyone knows the Madame Butterfly. So the Broadway audience, they need to be introduced to the Puccini opera. So it has always been very musical to me, and in my head, it would be very interesting to create a reverse opera. Living through all these years, seeing how the East-West counterplaying and interplaying with each other, but also the idea of, Asian identity and Western identity, I just feel is more and more timely, more so than less so, to make this into an opera. So, yeah.
Well, it's also interesting because it's definitely, when you think of the central character of Gallimard, it's his sort of fantasy of this world, right? It's not necessarily a natural depiction. There are characters who come in and you wonder if they only exist in his head, or is he a reliable narrator? And that notion of self-deception, I guess, is quite fascinating to me. I mean, is that?
Yeah, I think the original, I heard the story and I thought about it for about a year, and then I was trying to figure out how to, what do I call, break the back of the story, how to break the story. And at some point, I was living in LA at the time, I was driving around, and I thought, well, what did this diplomat think that he'd found? And the answer came to me, oh, he probably thought he'd found his version of Madame Butterfly. And at that point, the idea of dovetailing the events of the spy story with the plot of Madame Butterfly seemed to be an interesting way to get at the material. So I like to basically, when I write something, have a vague idea of where I'm starting, where I'm ending. So I thought, okay, at the beginning, the Frenchman would fantasize that he was Pinkerton, the American lieutenant from the opera, and that by the end of the show, the Frenchman would realize that, oh, he's actually Butterfly, in that it's he who was deceived by love, and the Chinese spy who perpetrated that deceit was therefore the real Pinkerton. And so once I had kind of that way through it, then I could write the play, and it also suggests, oh, we're going to be seeing it through Gallimard's lens, and it's going to be a flawed lens, and it's going to be colored by all sorts of unconscious biases, and that so that when you use the term unreliable narrator, it would be not only an unreliable narrator, but an unreliable production, in the sense that the audience would believe for 2/3 of the show that they were seeing a woman, and then when Gallimard realizes that the Chinese spy is physically male, that's when the audience would realize it as well. And that was always the sort of conceit for the construction.
Now, when you did it recently, it was what, 2017? There was a new version on Broadway. A new version on Broadway. You took a second look at it. What changes did you make? Or was that? And the reason why I'm asking that is because of what changes are there for the opera? So for the most recent Broadway version.
Right. So when we went back to do the Broadway revival, which Julie Taymor directed in 2017, I thought, oh, there's so much that has changed in the last 30 years in terms of the way we look at gender. So the original M. Butterfly is very kind of gender binary, in the sense that, oh, we fool the audience, as I just said, like it's a woman, then it's a man, and that's the kind of gotcha of the production. In a way, it's similar to The Crying Game, and The Crying Game came after M. Butterfly, and there's a whole story about The Crying Game and M. Butterfly that we don't need to go into right now. But now we think of gender as much more fluid and much more of a spectrum. So I wanted to kind of reflect that, as well as, by this point, because the play had been a success, there had been a lot more information that had come out about the actual French diplomat and Chinese spy. There's a book published, like Barbara Walters went over and interviewed them. There was all sorts of stuff. Which then reflected something else that's changed in the last 30 years, which is the power balance between the US and China. And I wanted to kind of increase the Chinese presence in the revival, and it turned out that the actual Chinese spy also was well known for performing a Chinese opera with Butterfly in the title, Butterfly Lovers. And so we elevated Butterfly Lovers to sort of be, live in the world of Madame Butterfly. And a lot of those, I believe the revival wasn't as successful commercially, but I really liked the new script, and we've incorporated a lot of that into this libretto.
So for the opera, how did the two of you work on this? Because what's wonderful to watch when we're all together, Huang Ruo has this wonderful respect for David, which is really quite something as you know, a collaborator. But then also David, the way you defer to Huang Ruo as the composer. I mean, sometimes David, you'll say, well, I just write the words. You've got to, you know, make this thing function as an opera. So how did you collaborate on that and to decide how to shape the opera as opposed to just setting it straight from the play?
Yeah, first of all, what I was thinking is the opera needs to be different from the play, definitely different from the movie. Otherwise, why do an opera? And the strength of opera is to deepening the character, to reveal the character, to express the emotion, and to really reveal why these two people are there. Now, we don't provide answers. We don't necessarily need to show the audience whether Gallimard, know or not know, or whether Song Li-ling love him or not. But we want to pose two questions there to the audience, and through music, through the words. So back to what I was talking about, seeing the play version of M Butterfly, the music was always as a source music playing in the background. When we do the opera, the benefit is then I could really dig into the music to make the Puccini as some kind of illusional appeal, so that the character, they are not just reference to a Puccini opera character, but they are actually in it, almost like pre-Puccini. Right. So so there are many fascinating things in my memory land, but I remember very clearly one thing, David, I think we have a talk. You were reviving the play version for the Broadway then, and you very respectfully asking me, now I'm adding this and adding that. Would you prefer the opera version to be closer to the new revival version of the play or the original version? So I thought of it 3 days, and then I get back to David. I said, you know what? I'm still a sucker for the original version. So let's just based on that version. Because with opera, you need less story, not more story. So we actually take out the wife character. So that scene of wife asking him this or that, we actually don't have that character anymore. Just focus on the main character. Also. One way I feel, the beauty of the story is even the audience know, actually there is a guy playing a woman. So what? We want to be fooled. That's why we came to theater. We want to see how well you can fool us, right? So even they know the answer, but they can still go with it. So that's our job, to make that magic happen.
Fantastic. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, except it's kind of an in-between version, really. Because, for instance, the wife, which doesn't exist in the opera, did exist in the original version. And we've interpolated other things, particularly Butterfly Lovers, from the revival into the opera. So it's fusion.
A fusion of both versions. And the Chinese Butterfly Lover story is important because we want to show her doing a Chinese opera. And what opera is better than the Butterfly Lover story. So also with that, I actually turned a Puccini overture into a Peking Opera motifs. So that is linking these two together also.
Great. So why don't we hear some music from M Butterfly the opera? So this is, I'm going to let David set this up. Our first selection this evening is Late at Night, It Burns from Act 1, Scene 4. What's going on here?
Right, so Gallimard, who's the French diplomat, has come to China, and he is kind of a low-level functionary in the French embassy in Beijing. in the early 60s. And at that point, France was actually one of the few European nations that has an embassy in China. And he goes to a performance that's being done at the embassy to try to amuse the foreigners, and sees this amazing woman performing Madame Butterfly, the death scene from Madame Butterfly. And Gallimard has always been fascinated by Madame Butterfly, and goes backstage, meets Sung Li-ling, and they have kind of a tense exchange, but he continues to dream of her, and he conjures up his best friend from school, Marc, and Marc was always the more, what we now call toxic male, but was sort of a role model for Gallimard, and Marc gives him some advice.
Okay, great. So we have Kangmin Justin Kim, countertenor, and Michael Hawk, baritone, and Joshua Dennis, and John Arita is our pianist. So let's hear this first excerpt from M. Butterfly.
By an old friend from school. Marc, I was always the most popular guy. You were always pathetic with women. Happy your skin has cleared. Look at you now, Rene. Here in the East, Rene. Exotic women swarm round. I've come across time and space to congratulate you. It's impossible. I'm a foreigner. She cannot love you, it's taboo, but something deep inside must surrender to you. It is her destiny. How do you imagine all this? It's an old story. It is in our blood, in their blood also.
great. So Huang Ruo, there's a lot of Puccini in there.
Yes.
So, which is a great thing. But were you nervous about incorporating Puccini, specifically Madame Butterfly, into this?
It's out of copyright? No, I'm
oh, it's out of copyright. That's a commissioner's dream, by the way.
Right.
But taking on something like this, how did you feel about that? Because that's rather, I should imagine that's rather daunting, saying that you're going to.
Well, first of all, if we cannot avoid it, we should face it. Because I don't think that to write an M Butterfly, we just totally avoid Madame Butterfly. That's not the point.
Right.
As what David was previously saying, we want to reverse it. So again, I'm being a little nerdy here. So if you hear the piano, the dun, dun, what was the motive? Ding, dun, dun, ding, right? Go up, dun, ding. So in the Puccini, it was ding, dun. So I reversed it.
And
so,
you've also done that with the prelude.
Right.
Is it upside down?
So you might hear a little bit. So that's the prelude. So in the Peking Opera, I don't know whether you have it there. Do you mind just play a little bit of the Peking Opera? Yeah, this is out of our playbook today, but yeah. So yeah, if I don't point that out to you, you might not notice that's the reverse of the Puccini, but it's there. But I do have a song to sing the Puccini at that point, because this is a very crucial point in the opera, because at this point, Gallimard decided, in a way, almost like someone put a curse on him, he became Pinkerton. At this point, he fell in love with her. And of course, it was Marc. And Marc is non-existing, a real high school friend or college friend. It was him, the evil twin of him, and telling him to go for it. So, so to me, I want to create that psychological twist here. That's the reason you hear the...
So when you were starting, and just thinking about process up there, when you're setting out to create an opera, do you just dig right in and start, or do you start thinking about themes and motifs and things like that you might want to use in an opera?
Well, I start with the whole overall structure, the picture. So there is themes, but not as rigid as Wagner would do. In this case, to me, I see different shades of the same color. So if this, I need a little more, more Pekingese opera song, or a little more self-contained song. So there is difference when he's performing and when he's thinking. So I control that, and to me, I feel that is, how should I say, the motive has a progression. So same as each character. So for song, he started as a mystery, and then at a later aria, you will hear when he's questioning his own identity, questioning his own love. So that actually is a build up to that point. If you follow through the opera, motivically also build up to that point. So yeah. And
some opera composers go, they dig right in and they start composing full score, meaning they hear the orchestra, they hear everything, and it's all, that's the way they start. And then some sketch things out and then orchestrate later. How do you do it? What is your method, or do you change depending on whatever the project is?
I don't do short score, so which means I don't do a piano version first and then reorchestrate it or have someone orchestrate it. I go right into full score, voice and orchestra. Because I feel they, in a way, they are equal partners. The orchestra should inform the words as much as the voice will inform the words. So, so that way, I actually finish the full orchestra score first, and then I do the piano vocal.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
There's something I've always been curious about. We've written 3 operas now, and so at a certain point, you have a melody or something that you can sometimes sing to me, and I see you, like you've marked up the libretto, and you have like certain, and what are you? It's not like a staff. What are you doing there?
So I use this number system. So I have David's libretto. So I would mark out with numbers. So 1 would be the tonic, 5 would be the dominant, 2, 4 with a sharp would be F sharp. So I was just marking down all the notes in my head without really drawing out 5 staffs. But back to the process, one thing I should say is the way I always examine myself is I always start with less, which means if this line of libretto, I put the vocal in, put the music in, without orchestra, could that line sung by the singer, could that music inform the drama, inform the words or not? So I try to make the music inform that even without accompaniment. And then later on I add other things. Because I'm a true believer of drama should be in the voice, should be also in the music, so it's as one.
And a question for David. When you first hear a libretto, something that you've written, when you first hear it sung, are you ever shocked, or are you ever surprised that say, just in Huang Ruo's situation, oh my gosh, he said it this way and I didn't imagine it that way? Or do you just say, I've turned it over to the composer?
I mean, I think I'm always surprised because I do turn it over to the composer, and therefore I have no preconception. It is true that sometimes when I'm writing a libretto, I will make up a little tune in my head, just so, particularly with the libretto, that it'll have a certain meter. I have a sense of how long it's supposed to, can't use very many words. But they're totally silly melodies, and I don't necessarily even remember them. Except I did subsequently read that Oscar Hammerstein did the same thing, that he would make up a melody in his head. So I know it's going to be not my melody, and other than that, I'm just kind of delighted to see what Huang Ruo comes up with.
I'd be very curious to see.
I would love to see those.
What version you have?
The outtakes. Well, it's all, you mentioned something interesting about a libretto, and one reason why I think you're such a fine librettist is that you understand the economy of it, and I've worked with a lot of people who have done librettos for the first time, and they are always asking for advice. Like, what is your advice about writing a libretto? And in the most simplistic way, I'll say, look, it takes 3 to 5 times as long to sing something as it does to speak something, and get rid of your adjectives and adverbs, because that is where the music should take over, and the music's really got to drive it. And I know that sounds, well, either simplistic or rather harsh, but it seems to work. And I think the best libretti out there are those that are actually quite lean, very clear, where they allow room for the music to be there. Otherwise, you get into a situation with some librettos that are very, very dense, and it feels like the composer is just catching up to set the words to music. It's just sort of musicalized words.
Like supplements. Like supplements to the words.
Yes, yeah.
Like vitamin C.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I was just going to say that. Okay, good. Let's hear some more, shall we? So this is going to be an excerpt from Act 3, Scene 2, The Perfect Woman. And this is Gallimard, Michael Hawks.
So this happens fairly late in the story. At this point, Gallimard and Sung have had a love affair for several years in China, and then the Cultural Revolution happens. They're separated. Gallimard, the sort of self-esteem that Gallimard had obtained by being in this relationship got him promoted, but his advice actually wasn't very good. So he gets sent back to France, and they're separated, but he can't stop thinking about her.
Was waiting for me back in Paris. Friends and relatives, a little accounting, keeping track of traffic violations. Talk, and to anyone listening, it's only air too rich a diet to be swallowed by a mundane world. Why can't anyone understand that in China, I once loved and was loved by, very simply, the perfect
Modern opera with a tune. What a joy. This is great. I actually love that excerpt. I find you to be a very tuneful composer anyway, Wang Ruo. I really do. That melody is very, I don't know, it seems like a real part of your vocabulary. But you're a singer too.
Yeah.
That's all I get?
Well, like David, when I see words, I have music in my
I
mind.
see, okay, all right. David, you were gonna say something? Oh, I just grabbed your mic. Hey, I was going to ask you, so 33 years ago, that was roughly 1988, so this play dealt with a lot of gender issues, things that were probably in the late 80s quite shocking and surprising. It's interesting today how gender issues are still very much in, you know, things that we talk about in society, and people are, you know, sometimes very divided about it. And did you? I can't say that you know, you had the vision to see that this would have kind of an enduring story, but it does seem to be very topical even now. Is that kind of surprising to you, or?
Yeah, I think it's pretty lucky. No, so there are ways in which I feel like M. Butterfly was prescient in terms of kind of exploring gender, and in the context of what we now would call intersectionality, that M. Butterfly sort of connected kind of racism with imperialism, with sexism, and posited that they were part of the same phenomenon, the same worldview. And so I think it was pretty forward-thinking in that sense. And, you know, as I was saying earlier, when we got to the revival, I also felt, oh, maybe I wanted to kind of push it in terms of how it worked with the notion, with the idea of gender, to, as I was saying earlier, make it less like a flip. But as Huang Ruo was saying just now, that even if we know, we don't know. We don't necessarily know theatrically, we want to be fooled, but we don't necessarily know in life either, that there is a range of gender expressions. And basically what happens with Gallimard and Sung in this story is they find a world that works for them, that they find a way to express their feelings for each other. And then at a certain point, that starts to break down for Gallimard.
On the musical side of things, and choosing the voice type for Sung, Huang Ruo, did you always think of a countertenor, or did you ever think of, and we have an amazing countertenor in Kangmin Justin Kim, who's going to be doing it in Santa Fe, but just out of curiosity, did you ever think to embrace that old operatic tradition of using a mezzo-soprano, a woman playing a man? Was that ever a part of it? I'm just curious about how you chose voices for this.
I think, again, this also back to the difference between play and opera. And in opera, we do have the possibility to have countertenor, versus in play, you know, yes, you could find someone talk in a high voice, but in singing it's easier. But I always feel if you, well, in this case, it was written for, you know, the two male character in the play. I think I want to honor that. And I think with the countertenor voice, if I close my eyes, I can have that illusion. Back to what I was saying, even I could tell, you know, but I'm so happy and willing to be fooled. And I think that was what Gallimard was thinking as well. When the magic is there, you just go with it. And again, everyone has your own butterfly. Mine not a M butterfly, but we all have our own butterfly. It's our illusion. So I feel the countertenor voice, yes, existing in traditional Baroque music onwards, but in Chinese singing as well. For example, Cantonese opera, the Mei Lan Fang, for example, a very famous iconic opera singer. He's a man, but singing all these female roles, concubines, all this, that. So men singing with high voice, dressing up as women, to me, that was my culture. I grew up with it, seeing that. And in fact, in Cantonese opera, we have female dressing up as male, singing in a very low voice. So the gender switch in Chinese opera is very common. And also, back to the butterfly story, another great Chinese classic. Then you have, a female dressed up as a male, they become good friends. But they fell in love, but they don't know what kind of chemistry that was, back then, of course. So, yeah, so to me, it's just natural. I feel this is the right voice type.
To just go right for the countertenor and not do that. Huh? No, to use a countertenor.
That's right.
Just made perfect sense. Just because,
to me, this character is, to me, that's the most suitable voice type. Maybe after our world premiere, we will try a version with mezzo-soprano. Yeah.
I mean, I think we always talked about it being a countertenor because in opera, the music, and I think I do when I work in the operatic form. We disagree on this, but I feel like the composer is the heavy element. The composer is the primary generative artist. And so I want to create something that's going to help the composer to do their best work. But also, the expression of the story comes through the music. And therefore, it just feels logical to have a countertenor if that is what we're going for in the story that we're telling dramatically. And the first time I ever saw a countertenor interpolated into the play Madame Butterfly was in a production in Russia in the early 90s by a director named Ramon Viktiuk. And he did this very, sort of European deconstructed M Butterfly and had a Kazakh countertenor playing sung and then interpolated some of the actual arias.
And Jim, the question, of course, to ask is why baritone instead of tenor?
Yeah, exactly. Well, yes, also baritone.
I don't see your sheet. I don't know whether. But that was a struggle for us for a while.
To figure out whether Gallimard would be a tenor or a baritone?
Of course, if you go to Pinkerton, that's the tenor. But I just feel the Gallimard character is a baritone to me. He's not flashy. He's,
he's a guy.
Yeah, he's, have a beer standing there watching other people dancing, that kind of guy.
Right. So. Now, there's also a chorus in this show, and they bookend the piece. We start off with a gossiping chorus, right? And it kind of sets up the whole tone. It's almost of the piece. It's like people looking at news headlines and gossiping about that. And talk a little bit about how you use the chorus in it, because you obviously don't have a chorus in a play, right? But how are you using them in M Butterfly the opera?
Well, it starts with this humming chorus in the original Madame Butterfly. So I always thought, I've seen different productions, but I always thought, has an invisible chorus that is so beautiful. So in M Butterfly, I also created a humming chorus, but they are not the relatives of Jojo Sang. They became just the sound, the wind, the nature. Then that chorus, in a way, almost like a Greek chorus in a play, they became the gossip chorus. They're talking about news headline, Gallimard, how could he not know, this or that. And then they also turned into, partying guests. So I think, yes, we focus on the main characters, two of them, but the chorus provides a lot of atmosphere, backdrops. Character also, to me, it will create a very dimensional sound space and time. Yeah.
Right. Let's hear another excerpt. Is that okay? I'm just enjoying going through all of these. So let's see. We have one from Awoke as a Butterfly, and this is from Act 3, Scene 1. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so this is an example of, I think, how we collaborate well, because every time we do something together, there's like some point in the process when Huang Ruo makes me write another aria. And because there just has to be more kind of emotional content. And I grumble, and he always turns out to be right. Because he's got great theatrical instincts. So we just saw the scene where Gallimard's back in Paris, and more or less simultaneously, Sung is being sent back sent to Paris from China during the Cultural Revolution to find Gallimard and more explicitly spy on him.
So here's Kangmin, Justin Kim again, and John Arita at the piano. Beautiful, wonderful. So,
Jim, may I just say one
yes,
thing quickly?
please.
I changed my mind. I will always stick with countertenor.
I was going to say after that, there you go. Yeah.
Well, also, how rare to create a role for Asian countertenor,
I was just
and
going to-
we need more of that.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Justin.
Absolutely. Because of the postponement, and there was a little extra time on your hands, did you go back and look at anything that you had written? Did you go back? Because we were ready to go. I think we were holding out hope that we were going to get the all clear. I remember as far as,
Right.
as late as maybe April or May of 2020, we thought, okay, here we go, we're gonna make it, and it of course didn't happen. But in the time that you had, did you go back and look at the opera again? Did you make changes? What did you do during that time with Butterfly?
Well, if I recall the feeling at that time, it was heartbroken, to say the least. Opera being canceled was not the first time to me, but having something that close, we even, have a wonderful workshop, open workshop at Asia Society. We did, more than 1 hour of music. So to me, I just want to see it happen. So in a way,
But you didn't change anything.
I did not change it. In a way, I just preserve it, put it away. I don't even look at it. I move on, but not willingly or happily. But I just want to preserve where it was, almost like frozen the time at that moment. And then until I wait to hear from that news, we can go on stage again. And I will continue that journey again.
Because you and I were in touch fairly frequently about this. Like, do you think it's going to happen? Is it going to happen? What are we going to do if it doesn't happen? And so it's nice that, we're going to be doing this. And yay.
Thank you, Santa Fe,
Thank
not
you, Santa
giving
Fe
us
Opera.
up.
Absolutely, yes. No, it's really terrific.
May I just add one more detail, this work in process. And this is the genius of David, why we also work well together is we inspire each other. So this area was added in, talking about go back to revisit it. We actually finished the whole opera, and then I looked through everything. I was like, David, wait a minute. I just feel I don't know Song Li-ling yet. I know she is angry, she is flirtatious, I know this or that, but she's always on the side. It's truly about Gallimard, this opera. You might just call it Gallimard. But I want to know how she was thinking without telling audience exactly what she is thinking, yes or no, right? So I want her to ask questions, questioning herself. So we cannot do it too early because the audience don't even know this character yet. And we cannot do it at the end, it's too late. So this is the moment before she is sent to France to encounter or confront her lover again to pretend or not to pretend. So this is the moment I feel is the right moment. And then I mentioned this idea to David, and very geniusly he pulled out this ancient story from the Zhuangzhou. David, would you mind telling us a little bit of this poem?
I think it's pretty well known, the idea of the man who falls asleep, dreams he's a butterfly, and then wakes up and asks, oh, am I a man who just dreamt I'm a butterfly, or a butterfly now dreaming that I'm a man? And so it was yet another, because we have obviously Madame Butterfly, and now in these versions we have butterfly lovers, and so it's one more sort of butterfly iteration.
And again, this is truly a famous metaphor story in China. Everybody knows it. A man dreams of a butterfly who dreams of a man, right? So in a way, it fits this character, to me, beautifully, also perfectly, because as what the libretto says, she wants to come out, or she wants to set herself free, but to where?
I think we have time for one more musical excerpt, if that's okay. And this is from Act 1, Scene 7. This is Are You My Butterfly, with Song and Gallimard. Can you set that up for us?
Right. So now we're going, we were at the end of the opera, now we're going back to early in the opera. And when I said that the sort of confidence and self-esteem that Gallimard obtains from this relationship with Butterfly caused him to get promoted. This is the scene right after he has been promoted to vice consul, and he and Sung Li-ling have been carrying on a very intense flirtation, which now goes further.
Just one quick note, at the end supposed to be with chorus, humming chorus as well, but since we don't have that, so just want to have a disclaimer.
Vice consul, impossible. As I stumbled out of his office, I saw it written across the sky. There is no God. Wait, perhaps there is a God, but that God is a man. Yes, that God is a man, and he understands. There is a God, that God is a man. Yes, yes, that God is a man, and he understands.
Crazy.
Mademoiselle So,
To come here at this hour.
it's the most amazing.
Bang on my door. Awaken my neighbors.
I've been promoted to vice consul. Are you my butterfly?
What are you saying? Don't you know already?
I want you to say it. I want your honesty. There should be nothing false between us, no false pride.
Yes, I am. I am
Thanks to you, I was promoted tonight. Thanks to you, my life is changed forever. My little butterfly, my little butterfly, no more secrets. I love you.
You are the one
As if to say, the oceans are no barrier to love. East can meet west, two souls in the dark, each
Right, so thank you, Kangmin, Justin, Tim, Michael Hawk, Joshua Dennis, and John Arita, and of course, David Henry Hwang and composer Huang Ruo for this discussion. Thanks to the Santa Fe Opera and everybody here at the Guggenheim.
And thanks to Jim Robinson.
Well,